The autumn evening at Windsor Castle carried an unusual chill that seemed to seep through the ancient stone walls. Kate Middleton stood by the tall windows of the private drawing room, watching the last rays of sunlight disappear behind the perfectly manicured gardens. Her fingers traced the delicate patterns on her emerald dress, a nervous habit she had developed over the years of royal duties. William entered the room quietly, his footsteps muffled by the thick Persian carpet. He had just finished a lengthy phone call with his private secretary about the upcoming state dinner preparations. The weight of recent family tensions showed clearly on his face, creating deep lines around his eyes that hadn't been there just months before. "The guest list has been finalized," William said softly, approaching his wife. "Father insisted that Camilla handle the seating arrangements personally." Kate turned from the window, her expression immediately shifting to one of concern. Over the past few weeks, she had noticed subtle changes in the family dynamics. Small conversations would stop when she entered rooms. Meaningful glances were exchanged between Camilla and certain staff members. Phone calls were taken in private offices with doors firmly closed. "Did you notice anything strange about her behavior during yesterday's charity meeting?" Kate asked, moving closer to her husband. She seemed unusually interested in the guest speakers we had invited. William nodded slowly, remembering the meeting Kate was referring to. The charity event was meant to raise awareness for children's mental health, a cause both he and Kate supported passionately. However, Camilla had asked surprisingly detailed questions about the background of each speaker, their connections to the media, and their previous statements about the royal family. She asked specifically about that journalist, Rebecca Morton, William recalled. "The one who wrote those articles last year about modernizing the monarchy." Kate felt a familiar knot forming in her stomach. Rebecca Morton was known for her investigative pieces about royal finances and had recently begun questioning certain expenditures related to Camilla's office. The journalist had also written favorably about Kate and William's approach to their royal duties, contrasting it with what she called older, more traditional methods. The couple walked together toward the fireplace, where a warm fire crackled softly. Family portraits lined the mantelpiece, showing generations of royals who had faced their own challenges and scandals. Kate picked up a silver-framed photo of the late Queen Elizabeth, remembering the grace with which she had handled difficult situations. "Your grandmother always said that family unity was the most important thing," Kate said, setting the photo back down carefully. "But I'm starting to wonder if someone doesn't share that view." William's jaw tightened slightly. He had grown up understanding the delicate balance required to maintain family harmony while fulfilling royal duties. However, recent events had tested even his patience. There had been whispered conversations between Camilla and King Charles that stopped abruptly when he entered the room. Documents were moved quickly from desks when he approached. Staff members seemed nervous around him, as if they were keeping secrets. "Mother has always been ambitious," William said carefully, using the title he had adopted for Camilla after his father's coronation. "But lately, her ambitions seemed to extend beyond her usual charitable work." Kate remembered the previous week's incident that had particularly troubled her. She had been walking through the corridors of Buckingham Palace when she overheard Camilla speaking quietly with her private secretary. They were discussing timeline adjustments and strategic positioning in terms that sounded more like political campaign language than royal duty planning. Strategic positioning for what? Kate had wondered at the time. The answer had become clearer during a family dinner 3 nights ago. The conversation had turned to the future of the monarchy, and Camilla had made several pointed comments about the need for experienced leadership during transitional periods. She had emphasized the importance of stability and proven judgment in ways that seemed directed specifically at William and Kate. "Did you notice how she kept mentioning the Australian tour we're planning?" Kate asked her husband. She suggested multiple times that perhaps it should be postponed until after the coronation anniversary celebrations. William had indeed noticed. The Australian tour was meant to strengthen Commonwealth relationships and showcase the younger generation of royals. It was an important step in William's preparation for his eventual role as king. Camilla's suggestions to delay it had seemed innocent enough at first, but combined with her other recent behaviors, a pattern was emerging. She also recommended changes to our children's education schedules, William added, suggesting they might benefit from more traditional tutoring approaches. This had been particularly concerning to Kate. She and William had carefully planned their children's education to balance royal responsibilities with normal childhood experiences. They wanted George, Charlotte, and Louis to understand their heritage while also connecting with people from all walks of life. Camilla's suggestions would have isolated the children more, limiting their exposure to different perspectives. The fire popped loudly, causing both Kate and William to look up from their thoughts. The sound reminded them of similar evenings they had spent discussing family matters, but tonight felt different. Tonight, they were not just discussing family dynamics. They were trying to understand what felt like a carefully orchestrated campaign. "Remember what happened during the Commonwealth Day service planning?" Kate asked, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. William's expression darkened as he recalled the incident. Camilla had volunteered to coordinate with various Commonwealth representatives about their participation in the service. However, when William had later spoken directly with some of these representatives, he discovered that they had received different information than what Camilla had reported to the family. Small discrepancies in timing, emphasis on different aspects of the ceremony, and subtle changes to the roles assigned to different family members. "It's as if she's creating her own version of events," William said quietly. "Managing information flow to support a narrative that benefits her position." Kate walked to the bookshelf, running her fingers along the leather-bound volumes that had belonged to previous generations of royals. Many of these books contained accounts of palace intrigue, family conflicts, and power struggles that had shaped the monarchy's history. She had read several of them, trying to understand how previous generations had navigated similar challenges. In all those historical accounts, there's always someone who believes they know better than everyone else, Kate observed. Someone who thinks they can manipulate situations to achieve what they believe is the right outcome. William joined his wife by the bookshelf, pulling out a biography of King Edward VII. The book fell open to a chapter about family tensions during the transition from Queen Victoria's reign. The parallels to their current situation were uncomfortable, but unmistakable. "The difference is that we're not living in the 19th century, William said. "Modern media, social networks, and public scrutiny mean that family conflicts can become public scandals very quickly." This was precisely what worried Kate most. If Camilla was indeed orchestrating some kind of plan to reshape the family's public image or internal power structure, the potential for public embarrassment was enormous. The royal family had worked hard to rebuild their reputation after various scandals of the past. Any hint of internal conflict could undo years of careful relationship building with the British people. "What exactly do you think she's trying to achieve?" Kate asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. William closed the book and returned it to the shelf before responding. "I think she wants to ensure that when Father steps down, the transition happens in a way that maintains her influence and position. She's building relationships, controlling information, and positioning herself as indispensable to the monarchy's future." The realization hung heavy in the air between them. Camilla wasn't just planning for King Charles's reign, she was planning for what would come after, and her plans seemed to involve limiting William and Kate's independence while maximizing her own continued relevance. Kate moved back toward the window, where darkness had now completely settled over the grounds. Security lights illuminated the pathways where guards made their regular rounds. The sight reminded her that their family lived constantly under observation, their every move scrutinized and analyzed by media, public, and apparently by other family members as well. "We need to be very careful about how we handle this," Kate said, her voice steady despite the anxiety she felt. "If we're wrong about her intentions, we could damage family relationships unnecessarily. But if we're right and we do nothing, then we could find ourselves marginalized in our own family." William finished the thought. "Reduced to ceremonial roles while real decisions are made by others." The couple stood together in comfortable silence, both understanding the gravity of their situation. They had always known that royal life involved complex politics and competing interests. However, they had hoped that within their immediate family, they could maintain honesty and mutual support. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the ancient windows and reminding them of the storms that had weathered these walls for centuries. Their family had survived civil wars, world wars, scandals, and social revolutions. They would survive this challenge too, but it would require wisdom, patience, and careful planning. "Tomorrow evening is the pre-dinner reception for the state visit," William said, referring to the event where Camilla's seating arrangements would be revealed. "If she's planning something, we'll likely see the first signs of it then." Kate nodded, understanding that the next evening would serve as a test of their theories about Camilla's intentions. The guest list included several influential journalists, political figures, and Commonwealth representatives. How Camilla arranged the seating, who she placed near whom, and how she managed the conversations would provide important clues about her actual agenda. "Whatever happens tomorrow night, we'll handle it together," Kate said, reaching for William's hand. As their fingers intertwined, both felt a mixture of apprehension and determination. They had faced public scrutiny, media criticism, and personal challenges before. This situation would test their unity as a couple and their commitment to their future roles in a way they had never experienced. The fire began to die down, casting dancing shadows across the room. In a few hours, they would need to prepare for another day of royal duties, public appearances, and family obligations. But for now, they stood together, planning their approach to a challenge that could define their relationship with the royal family for years to come. Neither Kate nor William could have predicted that within 24 hours, their careful theorizing would be replaced by shocking certainty, and that Camilla's secret plan would reveal itself in a way that would leave them both stunned and fighting to protect everything they had worked to build. The grand ballroom of Buckingham Palace sparkled under the light of 12 crystal chandeliers. Kate adjusted her sapphire necklace one final time before taking William's arm as they prepared to enter the pre-dinner reception. The guest list read like a who's who of international diplomacy, media influence, and Commonwealth leadership. Every conversation tonight would matter, every introduction would be scrutinized, and every seating arrangement would send a message. "Remember, we're here to observe and learn," William whispered to Kate as they approached the ballroom doors. "Whatever Camilla has planned, we'll see it unfold naturally." The doors opened to reveal a room already buzzing with elegant conversation. Diplomats in formal attire mixed with journalists in their finest evening wear, while Commonwealth representatives shared stories with British political figures. Servers moved gracefully through the crowd with silver trays of champagne and carefully prepared appetizers. Kate immediately noticed that Camilla was positioned near the center of the room, surrounded by a carefully selected group of guests. Her stepmother-in-law wore a stunning burgundy gown and appeared to be holding court, directing conversations with the skill of a seasoned politician. "Look who she's speaking with," Kate murmured to William, nodding discreetly toward Camilla's circle. Rebecca Morton, the investigative journalist they had discussed the night before, stood at Camilla's right side. Next to her was Sir Anthony Harrison, a former diplomat known for his influence with Commonwealth governments. Also in the group was Margaret Thornfield, a social media strategist who had recently begun working with several royal family members on their digital presence. William's jaw tightened as he recognized the strategic value of this particular gathering. Rebecca Morton had the power to shape public opinion through her writing. Sir Anthony could influence international relationships. Margaret Thornfield controlled how royal family members appeared online. Together, they represented a formidable combination of media, diplomatic, and digital influence. "Should we join them?" Kate asked, though something in her voice suggested she already knew the answer. Before William could respond, they were approached by Lord Patterson, an elderly courtier who had served the royal family for over 30 years. His expression was unusually grave as he bowed slightly to the couple. "Your Royal Highnesses, might I have a brief word?" Lord Patterson asked quietly. "There's something you should know about this evening's arrangements." Kate and William exchanged a quick glance before following Lord Patterson to a quieter corner of the ballroom, near a magnificent portrait of King George III. The irony of discussing family politics beneath the image of a king who had faced his own familial challenges was not lost on either of them. "I feel it's my duty to inform you that certain conversations have been taking place regarding the future direction of royal responsibilities," Lord Patterson began carefully. "Conversations that perhaps should have included your input." William leaned forward slightly. "What kind of conversations, Lord Patterson?" The elderly courtier glanced around nervously before continuing. "Her Majesty Queen Camilla has been meeting privately with several key stakeholders over the past month. The discussions have centered around what she terms transitional leadership strategies for when His Majesty the King decides to step back from his duties." Kate felt her heart rate increase. This was exactly what she and William had suspected, but hearing it confirmed by someone with Lord Patterson's credibility made the situation feel much more serious. "These meetings have included media representatives?" William asked, though he could already guess the answer. "Among others, yes," Lord Patterson confirmed. "The suggestion has been made that perhaps a more gradual transition of responsibilities might serve the monarchy better than the traditional immediate succession. The idea being that experience should guide the process rather than simply protocol." The implications were staggering. If Camilla was proposing a gradual transition, she was essentially suggesting that William should not immediately assume full responsibilities when King Charles stepped down. Instead, there would be some kind of interim period where experienced family members, presumably including herself, would maintain significant influence over royal decisions. "Has the king been informed of these discussions?" Kate asked quietly. Lord Patterson's hesitation provided its own answer. "I believe Her Majesty Queen Camilla intends to present these ideas to His Majesty at the appropriate time. Tonight's gathering appears to be designed to build support for the concept among influential outside parties." William looked across the room at Camilla's animated conversation with her carefully selected group. Now he understood why she had insisted on personally managing the guest list and seating arrangements. This wasn't just a state dinner reception, it was a strategic networking event designed to build support for her vision of the monarchy's future. "Thank you for bringing this to our attention, Lord Patterson," William said formally. "Your loyalty to the institution is deeply appreciated." As Lord Patterson melted back into the crowd, Kate and William found themselves alone with a shocking new understanding of the evening's true purpose. Camilla wasn't just managing a social event. She was conducting what amounted to a diplomatic campaign to reshape the future of the British monarchy. "We need to circulate and listen to what people are saying," Kate said, her mind already working on how to gather more information without appearing suspicious. The couple separated, each moving through different sections of the room to engage with various guests. Kate approached a group that included several Commonwealth representatives, while William joined a conversation near the windows that featured British political figures. As Kate listened to the Commonwealth representatives, she began to understand the scope of Camilla's preparation. These officials had clearly been briefed about potential changes to royal visit schedules, modifications to traditional ceremonies, and new approaches to Commonwealth relationships. The changes were presented as modernization efforts, but Kate could see how they would actually centralize more control with senior family members rather than preparing for William's eventual leadership. Meanwhile, William's conversation with the political figures revealed another dimension of Camilla's strategy. They spoke enthusiastically about proposals for new advisory councils that would help guide royal decision-making during transitional periods. These councils would include experienced royal family members, former diplomats, and carefully selected public figures. The politicians seemed convinced that such structures would provide stability and continuity. After nearly an hour of careful listening and strategic conversations, Kate and William found each other again near the entrance to the dining room. Both had gathered disturbing information, but neither had heard anything that would be easily contradicted or dismissed. "She's been incredibly thorough," William said quietly. "Everyone I spoke with had been given detailed briefings about her ideas. They're all convinced that gradual transition would be better for the country and the Commonwealth." Kate nodded grimly. "The Commonwealth representatives believe they're supporting modernization efforts. They don't realize they're actually supporting a plan that would delay your full assumption of responsibilities." Before they could continue their conversation, the doors to the state dining room were opened, and guests began moving toward their assigned seats. This would be the moment when Camilla's seating arrangements would reveal the final pieces of her strategy. Kate and William entered the dining room to find a magnificent table set for 40 guests. The placement cards were written in Camilla's distinctive handwriting, and as they found their assigned seats, the strategic nature of the arrangements became immediately apparent. Kate found herself seated between the Australian High Commissioner and a prominent British historian who specialized in constitutional monarchy. William was placed near the head of the table, but separated from Kate and surrounded by guests who had clearly been briefed about the transitional leadership concepts. Most telling was Camilla's own placement. She had positioned herself at the opposite end of the table from King Charles, allowing her to conduct her own separate conversations while maintaining visual contact with the entire gathering. Near her were Rebecca Morton, Sir Anthony Harrison, and several other key influencers from the evening's earlier conversations. As the first course was served, Kate listened carefully to the discussions around her. The Australian High Commissioner spoke enthusiastically about proposals for extended royal visits that would allow for deeper cultural exchange and relationship building. The historian discussed the benefits of advisory councils and gradual power transitions in historical contexts. Kate realized that these weren't random dinner conversations. Each guest had been carefully prepared with talking points that supported Camilla's vision. The dinner was serving as a kind of live focus group, allowing Camilla to see how her ideas were received by different types of influential people. Across the table, William was experiencing similar conversations. His dinner companions discussed the wisdom of experiential learning periods for future monarchs, the value of mentorship from senior family members, and the importance of maintaining stability during leadership changes. As the evening progressed, Kate began to understand the full brilliance and audacity of Camilla's plan. She wasn't just proposing changes to royal protocols, she was building consensus among influential outsiders who would then serve as validators for her ideas when she eventually presented them to King Charles and the broader royal family. The media representatives would write favorably about the proposals because they had been involved in their development. The political figures would support them because they believed they had contributed to their formation. The Commonwealth representatives would advocate for them because they saw them as beneficial to international relationships. By the time Camilla formally proposed her transitional leadership concepts, she would be able to present them not as her personal ideas, but as responses to widespread support from media, political, and international sources. During the main course, Kate caught William's eye across the table. His slight nod confirmed that he had reached the same conclusions about the evening's true purpose. They were witnessing a masterclass in political manipulation, conducted with the polish and sophistication that only decades of royal experience could provide. The most troubling aspect was how reasonable everything sounded. The guests genuinely believed they were supporting positive changes that would benefit the monarchy and the country. They had no idea they were being used as unwitting participants in a plan that would fundamentally alter the line of succession and the distribution of power within the royal family. As dessert was served, Camilla stood to make what she termed a few brief remarks about the future of our constitutional monarchy. Her speech was eloquent, thoughtful, and perfectly calibrated to the audience. She spoke about the importance of experience, the value of gradual transitions, and the need for advisory structures that could guide the monarchy through changing times. The guests responded with enthusiastic applause. Several nodded approvingly at her suggestions about extended preparation periods for future monarchs and the establishment of formal mentorship roles for senior family members. Kate felt a chill as she realized how effectively Camilla had used the evening to build support for ideas that would directly impact William's future role as king. By the end of the dinner, virtually every influential person in the room believed they had heard thoughtful proposals for improving the monarchy, when they had actually been recruited as supporters for a plan that would delay and diminish William's authority. As the evening concluded and guests began to take their leave, Kate and William maintained their composure while internally processing the magnitude of what they had witnessed. They had suspected Camilla of planning something, but the sophistication and scope of her actual strategy exceeded their worst fears. "We should speak privately as soon as possible," William whispered to Kate as they said their goodbyes to departing guests. Kate nodded, understanding that everything had changed. They were no longer dealing with family tensions or minor political maneuvering. They were facing a comprehensive campaign that could reshape the future of the British monarchy, and they had been deliberately excluded from its development. As the last guests departed and the ballroom began to empty, Kate found herself gripping William's hand more tightly than usual. The evening had revealed not just Camilla's secret plan, but also the extent of their isolation within their own family. The question now was how to respond to a strategy that was already well advanced and had significant outside support. The morning after the state dinner reception dawned gray and misty over London. Kate stood in the breakfast room of Kensington Palace, staring at the collection of newspaper headlines spread across the mahogany table. Each publication told the same story from slightly different angles, but the message was unmistakably clear. "Royal family embraces modern transition strategies," proclaimed the Times. "Queen Camilla champions evolutionary monarchy," announced the Telegraph. "Future King William to benefit from extended preparation period," declared The Guardian. William entered the room, his face pale and drawn. He had been awake since 5 in the morning, fielding phone calls from palace officials who were scrambling to understand how detailed information about royal family discussions had appeared simultaneously in multiple major newspapers. "How could they have published these stories so quickly?" Kate asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Because they didn't write them last night," William replied grimly. "These articles were prepared in advance. The dinner reception wasn't just about building support for Camilla's ideas. It was about providing the final quotes and reactions needed to complete pre-written stories." Kate picked up the Times, reading aloud from Rebecca Morton's front-page article. "Senior royal sources confirm that Queen Camilla has been working with constitutional experts and Commonwealth representatives to develop innovative approaches to monarchical succession that prioritize experience and stability over traditional protocols." The phrase "senior royal sources" appeared repeatedly throughout all the articles. Kate and William both knew that this was journalist language for information that had come directly from Camilla herself, but the phrasing made it seem as though multiple family members supported the proposals. William's phone buzzed with an urgent message from his private secretary. "Father wants to see us immediately," he said, showing Kate the text. "He's at Clarence House." The drive to Clarence House took only 15 minutes, but it felt much longer as Kate and William prepared for what would certainly be a difficult conversation. King Charles had clearly been blindsided by the morning's newspaper coverage, and he would want explanations that neither of them could fully provide. They were ushered immediately into King Charles's private study, where they found him seated behind an ornate desk covered with the morning papers. His expression was a mixture of confusion, frustration, and barely controlled anger. "Can either of you explain to me how private family discussions became front-page news?" King Charles asked without preamble. William chose his words carefully. "Father, we've been concerned about some unusual activities over the past few weeks, but we had no idea they were leading to this kind of media coordination." "What kind of unusual activities?" King Charles demanded. Kate and William spent the next 20 minutes detailing their observations from the previous weeks. They described the private meetings, the careful guest list management, the strategic conversations during the reception, and their growing suspicions about Camilla's intentions. As they spoke, King Charles's expression grew increasingly grave. He had been completely unaware of his wife's campaign to build external support for changes to royal succession protocols. The revelation that she had been meeting with journalists, diplomats, and political figures without his knowledge represented a serious breach of family trust and constitutional propriety. "You're telling me that Camilla has been conducting what amounts to a political campaign without consulting me or the royal household's constitutional advisors?" King Charles asked. "That appears to be exactly what happened," William confirmed. "And based on this morning's coverage, it seems to have been remarkably successful." Before King Charles could respond, the study door opened to admit Camilla herself. She was impeccably dressed and appeared completely composed, despite the media storm that was certainly already reaching her staff. "I thought I might find you all here," Camilla said pleasantly, taking a seat without being invited. "I assume you're discussing this morning's rather extensive newspaper coverage." The tension in the room was immediately palpable. King Charles stood slowly, his face reflecting a mixture of hurt and anger that his wife had never seen before. "Camilla, I think you need to explain exactly what you've been doing for the past month," King Charles said, his voice controlled but clearly strained. Instead of appearing defensive, Camilla smiled confidently. "I've been working to secure the future of this monarchy, Charles. Someone needed to think strategically about the challenges we'll face in the coming years." She opened her handbag and withdrew a leather portfolio, placing it on the desk in front of King Charles. "I've prepared a comprehensive proposal that addresses succession planning, advisory structures, and transition protocols. Everything I've done has been designed to build support for these necessary changes." Kate felt William's hand tighten around hers as they both realized that Camilla had no intention of apologizing or backing down. If anything, she seemed to believe that the morning's media coverage had strengthened her position. "You involved outside parties in private family decisions," King Charles said, his voice rising slightly. "You coordinated with media representatives to publish information that should have remained confidential. You've created a constitutional crisis." Camilla's composure finally showed a crack. "I've prevented a constitutional crisis," she responded sharply. "William isn't ready for the responsibilities he'll inherit. He needs guidance, preparation, and oversight from people with actual experience." The words hung in the air like an accusation. William felt his face flush with a combination of anger and humiliation. Kate instinctively moved closer to her husband, providing physical support for what felt like a direct attack on his competence and character. That decision is mine to make, King Charles said firmly. Not yours, not the media's, and certainly not some collection of outside advisors you've assembled without authorization. Charles, be realistic, Camilla continued, apparently oblivious to the damage she was causing. William has never faced a real crisis. He's never had to manage complex international relationships without guidance. The Commonwealth representatives I spoke with have serious concerns about his readiness for independent leadership. Kate could no longer remain silent. Those Commonwealth representatives only have concerns because you created them, she said, her voice steady but clearly angry. You briefed them about problems that didn't exist until you invented them. Camilla turned toward Kate with an expression that was both dismissive and patronizing. My dear Kate, you're not seeing the bigger picture. This isn't about personal feelings. It's about institutional stability. No, William said quietly, standing up from his chair. This is about you deciding that you know better than everyone else how this family should function. The room fell silent as William walked to the window. Looking out at the garden where he had played as a child during visits to his father. When he turned back to face the room, his expression had hardened with resolve. Camilla, you've violated every principle of trust and protocol that holds this family together, William said. You've manipulated media coverage, misrepresented family discussions, and involved outside parties in private royal business without authorization. I've done what was necessary, Camilla replied, but her voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. King Charles opened the portfolio Camilla had placed on his desk, quickly scanning the documents inside. His expression grew increasingly troubled as he read her detailed proposals for advisory councils, extended transition periods, and oversight committees. This document suggests that I should announce my intention to step down within the next 2 years, King Charles said slowly. Were you planning to discuss this with me, or were you simply going to announce it through your media contacts? For the first time since entering the room, Camilla appeared genuinely surprised. Charles, surely you understand that retirement planning requires advance notice. The country needs time to prepare for transition. The country needs time to prepare for William's reign, King Charles corrected. Not for some elaborate interim period managed by committees and advisors. Kate watched as the full scope of Camilla's ambitions became clear. She hadn't just been planning to delay William's assumption of responsibilities. She had been planning to force King Charles into an early retirement that would create the extended transition period she believed she could control. You've been planning my father's abdication without consulting him, William said, his voice filled with disbelief. You've been building support for changes to constitutional precedent based on your personal assessment of what the monarchy needs. I've been thinking strategically about challenges that the rest of you have been ignoring, Camilla shot back, but her defensive tone revealed that she finally understood how seriously she had overstepped. King Charles closed the portfolio and looked directly at his wife. Camilla, what you've done amounts to a palace coup. You've attempted to circumvent established protocols and manipulate public opinion to force changes that would benefit your position at the expense of our son's rightful inheritance. The words, palace coup, seemed to shock Camilla into silence. She had clearly never considered her actions in such stark terms, but the description was uncomfortably accurate. The media coverage this morning cannot be undone, King Charles continued. However, the proposals contained in your documents will not be implemented. William will assume his responsibilities according to established precedent, without advisory councils, extended transitions, or oversight committees. Kate felt a wave of relief wash over her, but she also understood that the damage to family relationships would be much harder to repair than the constitutional issues. What happens now? Kate asked quietly. King Charles looked at each person in the room before responding. Now, we begin the process of rebuilding trust and restoring proper protocol. Camilla will issue a statement clarifying that her comments to the media represented personal opinions rather than official royal family positions. "I will not be issuing any retractions," Camilla said stubbornly. "Then you will find yourself excluded from future family decisions and public appearances until you choose to prioritize family unity over personal ambition," King Charles replied with finality. The meeting ended with Camilla leaving the room in angry silence, while Kate, William, and King Charles remained to discuss damage control strategies. The morning's newspaper coverage had created public confusion about royal succession plans that would require careful management in the coming weeks. As they drove back to Kensington Palace, Kate finally allowed herself to fully process what had occurred. Camilla's secret plan had indeed come crashing into view, but not in the way she had intended. Instead of successfully reshaping the monarchy's future, she had exposed her own willingness to manipulate and deceive for personal gain. "She really believed she could control everything," William said as they pulled through the palace gates. Kate nodded, thinking about the complexity of the scheme they had witnessed. "The scary thing is how close she came to succeeding. If we hadn't been paying attention, if your father hadn't been willing to stand up to her, her version of events might have become reality." That evening, as they sat together in their private sitting room, Kate and William reflected on the lessons learned from Camilla's failed coup attempt. They had discovered that even within the royal family, vigilance was required to protect institutional integrity and personal relationships. "Your grandmother always said that the crown's greatest strength was its continuity," Kate observed. Camilla tried to break that continuity for her own purposes. William reached for Kate's hand, the same gesture of mutual support that had carried them through the previous days of uncertainty. "What matters is that the continuity is preserved, and we've learned who we can truly trust within our own family." The crisis had passed, but its effects would influence royal family dynamics for years to come. Camilla's secret plan had revealed not just her ambitions, but also the strength of the constitutional principles and family bonds that had ultimately defeated her scheme. Outside their window, London continued its ancient rhythm, unaware of how close the monarchy had come to a fundamental transformation. The crown would pass to William when the time came, as tradition demanded, but the path to that future would be traveled with greater awareness of the threats that could emerge from within their own family circle.